Okay, we're going to take a look at the harness and how to put the harness on properly, or more exactly where the harness should be seated on the body. It's quite common for people to ride the harness too high so that it's up into the kidneys or up in the upper part of the waist. What we want to do is cinch the harness down around the hips into the lower part of the waist where the hips are non-compressible. Up here we have the kidneys, and if we compress this too much or create a shock load here, we're going to be looking at trauma to the body. One of the other problems with the harness is a lot of people will ride the harness up too high, like a fall protection harness, up almost into the crotch. And what we want to remember is that the harness should be supporting the back of the leg down closer to the knee or the middle of the thigh, not up too high. If it is, then you're going to be hanging thusly. To know how the harness, the leg loops, how tight they should be, you should be able to place your hand inside, ball it to a fist, and have difficulty rotating it over to 90 degrees. That's right there, is about right. The waist should be very tight, should be very difficult to get a hand in. You want to cinch that as tight as you possibly can. Our main or ventral connection, sternal connection, dorsal connections, shoulder connections for confined space, and then we have our accessory loops. We want to cinch this down so that the shoulder part, when you're standing up straight, it's actually difficult to stand up straight. Then when you're in the seated position, when you're on rope, it will fit you properly and not fall off the shoulders. Okay? Now when we look at it, much tighter in the shoulders, not very comfortable now, but when he's in the seated position over the side of the wall, it's going to be much more comfortable. What we're going to do is we're going to hook Dave up to his dorsal position. The position of the attachment on the dorsal point, we can see right away that the harness, the waist point is being pulled up. We can see that we have occlusion occurring on his carotid. How's that feel, Dave? Good. It's starting to go a little bit red in the face, we're seeing. We also, if we look at the femoral artery, it's completely closed off, inhibiting blood flow, blood supply to the brain. Can you reach up and grab that line, Dave? Help yourself at all? No? Okay. We're going to quickly get Dave down here. This is not a good position to be in, so we're going to bring Dave back down to the ground. Dave's physiology now suspended instead from his sternal attachment. We can look, we can see on the femoral, the straps are opened right up. We can see significantly less occlusion of his carotid artery. His harness is sitting where it should be. Okay. Much better. Another big plus of attaching your belay point to the sternal instead of the dorsal is that Dave is now in a much better position to help himself. Go ahead, Dave. He can take a piece of prosthetics, rescue prosthetics, or a piece of webbing and create a heat and wrap, for example. He can, one of the things we want to do is sitting in this position, slowly but surely, is there's going to be pooling of blood down into his lower extremities. And eventually he is going to suffer suspension trauma. This is going to happen anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, especially if he's suspended from his dorsal. It's going to, the onset will be much lower when suspended from the sternum, but it's still occurring. We're still getting that pooling of the blood. So what ideally we want to do is raise the legs up to the height of his butt, and that is going to significantly reduce the amount of pooling. It's going to be like sitting on a sofa at home. At this point, Dave can adjust that heat and wrap to a position that he likes. He can find a position that's comfortable. Just put your hands down there, Dave. And his feet are now raised above his butt, and he's getting much better blood flow. This is actually what the body would try and do if he went into suspension trauma. It would try and put him in a horizontal position. So this is what's starting to happen here. In addition to that, Dave can now stand up, and he's now completely removed all the weight from his harness, and he's activated a large muscle group, which again acts as a pump So any blood pooling down is now, due to the activation of the muscles, circulating back through the body. Thanks, Dave.